Number 1. Greenland, where humans live amidst permafrost. On Earth, there are places where humans not only live, but are constantly negotiating with nature for the right to exist. The subarctic regions are one such example. Here, climate is not the setting, but the controlling force. Average temperatures in many areas consistently remain below -10 degrees Celsius, and winters can last for more than 8 months, making time a resource as scarce as food or fuel. In such an environment, the fact that humans still form and maintain communities is almost counterintuitive. In winter, the sun disappears for weeks, even months, leaving behind a seemingly endless night. In summer, the light never goes out. Human circadian rhythms are stretched and distorted by the sky itself, shaping sleep, mood, and lifestyles according to extreme cycles of light and darkness. In the Northern Hemisphere, there is a place considered the coldest center of human habitation where communities have existed for an extended period: Greenland. Here, winter temperatures can plummet below -30 degrees Celsius, while strong winds turn the cold into a force that almost pushes the human body away. Simply stepping outside in winter is an act of survival. In that world, everything depends on the weather. Travel, supplies, and even home repairs are only possible during brief periods when the ice recedes. Many villages in Greenland are isolated for much of the year, accessible only by small planes or ships during the short summer months. And this is the paradox. Greenland is almost the size of Mexico, yet it has only about 56,000 inhabitants. More than 80% of the island's surface is buried under kilometers of ice, holding nearly 7% of the world's fresh water. A single ice sheet is enough to cause global sea level changes if it melts. Greenland is not a completely independent nation. It is an autonomous territory of the Kingdom of Denmark. Its people, mostly Inuit, speak both Greenlandic and Danish and live in Scandinavian-style Arctic towns. It's not just a frigid land. It's a living experiment in how far humans can go to survive on the harshest edge of the planet. Number 2. A giant island with a tiny population. Greenland's capital is Nuuk, a city of only about 20,000 people, roughly the size of a small town in Europe or North America. On the entire island, which is nearly the size of Mexico, there are only about 60,000 inhabitants, mostly scattered along the coast and fjords. More than 85% of the population never ventures inland, as central Greenland is covered in ice almost year-round and is virtually uninhabitable. Looking at a map, the first question that always arises is why people are in such a place. How could a community form on an isolated, cold island so far from any centers of power? The answer lies in the maritime history of Northern Europe, where medieval sailors ventured beyond the boundaries of their own world. About 12 centuries ago, long wooden ships from Norway and Iceland began sailing westward. They lacked accurate maps, engines, and faced icebergs and North Atlantic storms. Yet they still traveled over 2,000 kilometers to reach the coast of Greenland, a land that Europe hadn't even officially recognized at the time. The first settlers didn't see Greenland as a dead land. They saw opportunity. The southern part of the island had a slightly warmer climate, enough to raise sheep and cattle and maintain pastures. They envisioned Greenland as a transit point between Europe and the North Atlantic, a new link in the expanding trade network of the Viking world. In its early stages, the Scandinavian population in Greenland reached around 2,000. The settlements gradually transformed into trading colonies, exporting walrus ivory, animal hides, and dried fish to Europe. Walrus ivory from Greenland even appeared in jewelry and chess pieces at royal courts, making this remote and icy island unexpectedly economically valuable. But that dream didn't last. As the climate grew colder, arable land shrank, and trade routes shifted, tiny communities on the edge of the Arctic began to be cut off from the world they were once connected to. And from there, Greenland's story took a completely different turn. Number 3. Why is this icy land called Greenland? Today, Greenland is a blend of two very different historical currents. About 90% of the population are Inuit, communities that have lived in the Arctic for over 4,000 years. Alongside them are descendants of Scandinavians who arrived on the island in the Middle Ages. These two worlds merge into a society of just over 50,000 people, creating an identity unlike anywhere else in Europe or North America. When the first Norse settlers landed in Greenland in the 10th century, they didn't see the pristine white landscape it is today. In the summer, the coastal valleys were covered with grass, low shrubs, and patches of land suitable for raising sheep and cattle. These areas were particularly concentrated in southern Greenland, where temperatures were then higher than they are now and the ice melted for months. Before them was a land that looked far greener than the Arctic, and that's how the name Greenland came about. Ice cores reveal that during the period between 900 and 1300 AD, known as the Middle Warm Period, temperatures in southern Greenland were about 1 to 2 degrees Celsius higher than they are today. That small difference was enough to create grasslands, a stable water supply, and rudimentary agriculture. To the Europeans of that time, Greenland was not an endless expanse of ice, but a new frontier of the expanding Nordic world. The name Greenland persists to this day, even though more than 80% of the modern island is now covered by permafrost. It is a relic of a rare moment in history when the climate allowed humans to venture further north than ever before. And from that moment, Greenland entered history as a land both promising and fragile, where human hope constantly faced the relentless power of the Arctic. Number 4. When the Vikings disappeared from the Arctic. As Scandinavian settlements in Greenland declined and disappeared around the 15th century, the vast island seemed to slip off the map of the Western world. On European nautical charts, the name Greenland persisted, but beyond the redrawn coastlines, there was no trace of European life. Meanwhile, the Inuit continued to survive along the coast through hunting and fishing, while over 80% of the inland area was covered by permafrost, making further settlement nearly impossible. Although Greenland was effectively abandoned, it never disappeared from political claims. Norway and later Denmark still considered the island their legitimate territory, based on its Viking heritage. When the two kingdoms united in the 16th century, Greenland was also included in that system, although for almost 200 years afterward, no European authority had a permanent presence there. The return only occurred in 1721 when Denmark sent missionaries and merchants to Greenland. The goal was not only to spread Christianity, but also to establish economic control. A monopolistic trading system was created, forcing the Inuit to exchange furs, sealskins, and dried fish through Danish stations for imported tools, weapons, and food. Along with trade came schools, laws, and a new language. Inuit children were taught to read and write in Danish, while Greenlandic was gradually pushed out of formal education. Traditional rituals, customs, and social systems began to be replaced by European models. Greenland was no longer a world of autonomous Arctic communities. It became part of an administrative apparatus based in Copenhagen, more than 4,000 kilometers away. And from that moment on, the fate of this icy island was no longer decided solely by the ice, wind, and sea, but by decisions made in centers of power far beyond its control. Number 5. Greenland under the shadow of Denmark. Today, Greenland has its own government and broad autonomy in many areas, from education to resource management. But in reality, the island cannot sustain itself. Nearly $1 billion are transferred annually from Denmark to Greenland just to keep this Arctic society running. More than half of the public budget doesn't come from Greenland itself, but from a country thousands of kilometers away. A landmass almost the size of Mexico, yet it survives thanks to money flowing from Europe. This paradox becomes even clearer when looking beneath the ice. Greenland is hiding reserves of uranium, iron, and rare earth elements indispensable to the modern technological world. Some mines in the south of the island are considered rare earth resources outside of China, suddenly making Greenland a target of scrutiny by the United States, Russia, and China in their global competition. Meanwhile, Greenland's day-to-day economy still relies on the sea. The North Atlantic waters surrounding the island are one of the richest fishing grounds in the region. Greenland's cold-water shrimp and halibut are exported to Europe and Asia, bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars annually for a society of just tens of thousands of people. Even the most basic needs reflect this dependence. Students must leave Greenland to attend university. Seriously ill patients must fly to Denmark for treatment. All land is state-owned, with no private ownership, to prevent speculation and maintain control over foreign corporations. Greenland thus exists in a precarious balance. It is a resource-rich and strategically located land, yet a small society dependent on a nation on the other side of Europe. And in the 21st century, the question is not just what Greenland has, but who will seize it. Number 6. The island that has caught the attention of major powers. For much of its history, Greenland was a name on the periphery of the map, a cold and remote land almost outside the mainstream of world power. But in the 21st century, the very ice that once isolated the island is transforming it into one of the new strategic hotspots. As the Arctic warms faster than the rest of the planet, Greenland's ice is beginning to thin, revealing lands and resources that have been buried for millennia. The melting ice is opening up new shipping routes connecting Europe, North America, and Asia via the Arctic. These routes are far shorter than traditional corridors like the Suez or Panama Canal, transforming Greenland from a geographical frontier into a potential transit point for global trade. At the same time, mineral deposits beneath the ice, from rare earth elements to uranium and iron, are becoming more accessible, increasing the island's strategic value year after year. Unsurprisingly, major powers are beginning to turn their attention to Greenland. The United States maintains an air base there to control Arctic airspace and air routes between the two continents. China seeks access through infrastructure and mining projects, as its high-tech industries depend on rare earth elements. Russia, meanwhile, is expanding its military presence in the Arctic, viewing the region as a new pillar of global power. And in the middle of it all is Greenland, a society of only tens of thousands of people, without an army and financially dependent on Denmark, yet occupying a position where the three largest powers all seek influence. As the ice continues to recede, the island is no longer just a remote Arctic landmass, but a crossroads of resources, trade, and power, where its future is increasingly determined by forces far larger than itself. Number 7. A quiet life between ice and sea. In the capital city of Nuuk, rows of colorful houses look like a painting against the backdrop of ice and rock. They are painted brightly, not just for aesthetics, but so that people can find each other in a world largely swallowed by white snow and darkness. Most of these housing complexes were built with government money, because real estate prices in Greenland are far higher than the income of its residents. A house in Nuuk can cost as much as in wealthy Europe, while many Greenlandic families still rely on rental subsidies to survive. This creates a paradox. Greenland is a land of global interest for its resources and strategic location, yet its inhabitants lack the income to own their own homes. Behind the painted walls lies a society that relies on Danish aid to keep life running. Out there, nature remains majestic and close at hand. Whales swim in Nuuk Bay. Seals and polar bears still appear along the coast. The air here is so clean, it's almost devoid of industrial smell, largely because most of the electricity comes from hydroelectric power and the island has virtually no large factories. But that pristine environment doesn't mean things are easy. Living in a community of just tens of thousands means everyone knows each other. In the small towns, teachers, fishermen, and shopkeepers meet every day. This social network helps Greenland survive in its harsh environment, but it also makes leaving common, especially among young people seeking educational and employment opportunities in Denmark or Europe. Greenland, therefore, is not just a land under the world's gaze for its minerals and melting ice. It is a place where a small society is trying to maintain its daily life while being drawn into economic and political currents far larger than itself. Number 8. Family is the only way to survive. In Greenland, the cold isn't just in the air, it's in the rhythm of life. When the sun disappears for months during the winter, darkness ceases to be a natural phenomenon and becomes part of the human psyche. In many towns north of the Arctic Circle, the sun may not rise for more than 80 consecutive days. During that time, life unfolds in artificial light, severely disrupting people's circadian rhythms. Sleep is disrupted, vitamin D levels plummet, and time seems to stretch. Greenland has one of the highest suicide rates in the developed world. According to public health figures, this rate is many times higher than in Denmark, particularly in remote Inuit communities. Alcohol and depression are common ways to escape feelings of isolation in a small society where educational and employment opportunities are limited. Each year, hundreds of young Greenlanders leave the island to study or work in Denmark, and the vast majority do not return. But in a society of just over 50,000 people, each departure leaves a huge void. In towns with only a few thousand inhabitants, the loss of a young generation puts schools, hospitals, and public services at risk of not having enough staff to operate. Some communities have had to merge or close essential facilities due to insufficient population. Greenland, therefore, faces not only melting ice and global competition, but also a silent internal crisis. It is a battle to keep people here, to keep families from falling apart, and to prevent Arctic communities from disappearing from the map. Number 9. Community survival culture in Greenland. In a world where cold, darkness, and isolation can break people, Greenland has developed a community-based survival culture. Here, almost no one lives alone. Family, relatives, and neighbors are not just social relationships, but a life insurance system. When the weather freezes the roads, when food is scarce, or when someone is in trouble, it is this network that keeps things from collapsing. The Inuit and their Scandinavian descendants have very different histories, but in Greenland, they are forced to share the same reality. The cold does not discriminate by origin. Therefore, cooperation becomes an instinct. Sharing food, helping each other repair houses, or looking after children are not special gestures, but the only way for a small community to survive in the Arctic environment. In the coastal towns and villages, people know each other well. From teachers to fishermen, from nurses to shopkeepers, everyone is part of a tightly knit network. When someone is in trouble, the entire community feels it. A person's absence isn't just a number, it's a real void. Therefore, Greenland doesn't develop according to the model of individual independence like many modern societies. Here, family is central to survival. Children grow up with the understanding that they belong not only to their parents, but to the entire community. The elderly aren't marginalized, for their experiences are part of the collective memory. In a land where nature constantly reminds people of their fragility, this cohesion isn't a moral choice, but a condition for survival. It's the thread that keeps small towns from disintegrating under the weight of ice, darkness, and isolation. Number 10. When modernity began to break through the Arctic. For much of its history, Greenland existed on a rhythm of life entirely different from the modern world. The Inuit lived by hunting, fishing, and communal sharing. Time was not measured by clocks, but by the ice season, the hunting season, and the cycles of the sea. In many communities, a family might rely on the same hunting grounds for generations to survive. But in the 21st century, that rhythm is being swept into the same current that has transformed most small societies on Earth. The internet, satellite television, and social media have connected Greenland to the world. Now, more than 90% of households in Nuuk have internet access, and even in remote towns, smartphones have become commonplace. This opens up education and information, but also brings with it images of a different life. For many young people, Copenhagen, Oslo, or London are no longer unfamiliar names, but places promising opportunity, money, and a less isolated future. Every year, hundreds of young Greenlanders leave the island to study and work in Denmark, and most do not return. With them go the language, skills, and cultural memories of an entire generation. In many Inuit communities, Greenlandic is increasingly overshadowed by Danish and English in schools and online. Skills that were once fundamental to survival, from seal hunting to reading sea ice, are disappearing. Supermarkets and imported food are replacing hunted meat, blurring the connection between humans and nature. Greenland is therefore facing not only economic or technological change, it is also at risk of losing the very way of life that has helped people survive on this icy land for thousands of years. And when a survival culture begins to fade, the biggest question is no longer how it will change, but how long it will survive. Number 11. The younger generation abandons tradition. When a culture begins to fade, the consequences often lie not in books, but in the people themselves. In Greenland, this is clearly demonstrated by a stark reality. There are no longer enough young people to sustain society. In many small towns, the number of people of childbearing age is dwindling, as entire generations have left the island to study, work, and build lives in Denmark or Europe. With a population of only tens of thousands scattered across an island the size of Mexico, each departure leaves a huge void. Finding a partner is difficult not because people don't want to love, but simply because there are few options left. In some communities, almost everyone is related or has known each other since childhood, making the formation of new families increasingly rare. This creates an invisible pressure. Family and children are no longer just private matters, but become community issues. As the number of children decreases, schools close. When young families disappear, towns lose their reason for existence. A society built on cohesion cannot stand firm without a next generation to take over and continue it. Greenland is thus facing a profound paradox. It is a land of global interest for its resources and strategic location, yet it risks running out of people to sustain itself. And in such a small society, the future is not determined by mineral deposits or shipping lanes, but by how many young families are willing to stay and raise the next generation on this icy land. Number 12. An island isolated from the world. Beneath Greenland's thick ice lies not just rock and ice, but one of the Arctic's largest strategic resource reserves. Geological surveys reveal the island contains significant reserves of rare earth elements, iron and uranium, essential materials for electric vehicle batteries, wind turbines, smartphones, and military technology. Regarding rare earth elements alone, Greenland is considered one of the few regions outside of China with the potential for industrial-scale mining, while China currently controls over 60% of the global supply. Some mines in southern Greenland are estimated to contain millions of tons of these strategic minerals, enough to supply the European and North American technology industries for decades. As the world shifts toward renewable energy and electric vehicles, the value of these deposits is rising faster than gold and oil. But with a population of only around 60,000, Greenland lacks the labor, capital, and infrastructure to mine them independently. A medium-sized rare earth mine can require an investment of over $1 billion and thousands of workers over many years, a scale far beyond the island's capabilities. This forces Greenland to rely on foreign corporations and large governments. In such a small society, even a single mining project can alter the entire labor market, housing prices, and social structure of many towns. Meanwhile, Greenland's economy remains heavily dependent on Denmark. Each year, Copenhagen transfers nearly $1 billion to Nuuk to maintain its budget, equivalent to more than half of the island's total public spending. This money covers hospitals, schools, transportation, and social welfare. Without it, many Arctic communities would be unable to sustain modern life. Greenland thus faces a paradox. On one hand, resources that could bring financial independence. On the other, subsidies that guarantee stability. But both paths come with the price of dependence on external forces. In a world where Arctic minerals are increasingly important, the question is not just how much resource Greenland has, but whether the Greenlanders have the power to control the treasure beneath their own ice. Number 13. Traveling by dog sled in temperatures of 50 degrees. In Greenland, the concept of transportation is quite different from the rest of the world. Even in the capital, Nuuk, the number of cars is very limited. Aside from a few short city streets, much of the island lacks a road network connecting towns. Over 90% of settlements are only accessible by air or sea, as ice, rocky mountains, and fjords prevent any attempts at building cross-island roads. In winter, temperatures in many areas can drop below -40 degrees Celsius, while Arctic winds can reach speeds of over 60 kilometers per hour, making the cold far more dangerous than the thermometer readings suggest. Under such conditions, engines and fuel become unreliable, and vehicle repairs are extremely expensive as almost all parts must be imported. For this reason, in many rural areas, the primary mode of transportation remains the snowmobile. When land, sea, and lakes freeze over, these vehicles can traverse spaces that cars could never reach. And in a world where modern technology often fails, an ancient solution proves remarkably resilient. Hurricane dog sleds are strapped to sleds to transport goods, food, and people over long distances across the ice. For the people of Greenland, sled dogs are not a symbol of the past, but an essential part of the current transportation system. They can operate continuously in temperatures that many machines cannot withstand. This makes Greenland one of the few places on Earth where nature still dictates how humans travel. For tourists, it's a rare Arctic experience. For those who live there, it's the daily reality in a land where ice, wind, and distance remain in control. Number 14. Life alongside icebergs and wild animals. Leaving Nuuk, Greenland enters a very different world. In many coastal and remote villages, there are no roads, no large hospitals, and no standard emergency services. When someone is injured or seriously ill, the only way to get them to medical facilities is by helicopter. In communities of only a few thousand people, such a flight can be the line between life and death. In these places, life still operates according to ancient rules. People rely on the sea and ice for survival. Hunting seals, small whales, and sometimes even polar bears is not a recreational activity, but part of the food system. Meat is consumed throughout the winter, while skins and furs are processed into clothing and items to withstand temperatures that can drop below -40 degrees Celsius. Agriculture is virtually non-existent in much of Greenland. Thin land, permafrost, and a short growing season make it very difficult to grow fruits and vegetables. This forces communities to rely on hunting and fishing for survival, just as their ancestors did for thousands of years. Packs of Greenland husky dogs are still used to pull sleds, helping people move and transport goods across the ice. In a world where modern technology is often powerless against the cold and distance, these ancient solutions remain the most reliable way to survive. Greenland, therefore, is not just an island of resources and geopolitics. In many places, it remains a land where humans confront nature directly, where survival is not an abstract concept, but an integral part of daily life. Number 15. Hunting for survival. In many remote areas of Greenland, life doesn't operate according to the familiar standards of the modern world. More than half of the island's settlements have only a few hundred to a few thousand residents and lack large-scale food stores. In winter, when ice and blizzards cut off shipping and air routes, supplies from the outside can be interrupted for weeks. Under these conditions, survival still depends directly on the skills of each family. When the sea and fjords freeze over with ice that can be several tens of centimeters to over a meter thick, people must use axes and specialized cutting tools to chisel through the ice. This work is not only arduous, but also dangerous, as winter temperatures often drop below -30 degrees Celsius, and the wind can cause rapid heat loss. Once the ice is broken, they cast nets or fishing lines into the cold water to catch fish. A successful catch can provide food for an entire family for several days, but if it fails, alternatives are virtually non-existent. In a society where food imports depend on weather and distance, each catch carries a real risk. To outsiders, these images may seem harsh, but to the inhabitants of Greenland, it is a continuation of a way of life that has existed for thousands of years. These skills are not learned in school, but passed down from parents to children through each ice season and each hunt. In a land where nature never gives way, human resilience remains the most important resource. Number 16. Ancient Arctic customs. For much of its modern history, Greenland was one of the most inaccessible places on the planet. But in the last decade, visitor numbers have surged along with the melting of the Arctic ice. Before the pandemic, Greenland welcomed over 60,000 visitors annually, a number nearly equal to the island's entire population. For a society of only about 60,000 people, that means that each summer, the number of outsiders could equal the number of local residents. Arctic cruise ships and international flights are increasingly common, connecting Nuuk and Ilulissat with Europe and North America. Ilulissat alone, home to one of the world's most active glaciers, attracts tens of thousands of visitors each year. The fjords, once home to only fishermen and hunters, are now becoming stops for expeditions and photographers. Tourism provides a new source of revenue for Greenland's economy, where much of the work still relies on fishing and subsidies from Denmark. Each tourist spends thousands of dollars on airfare, hotels, and tours, creating a cash flow that many small communities have never seen before. But with the money comes profound changes to the space, rhythm of life, and purpose of these Arctic towns. Traditional houses are being renovated into homestays and guest houses. Boats once used for fishing are now being used to carry tourists to see icebergs and whales. For many families, tourism provides a more stable income than hunting or fishing, but it is also changing how they view their own land. Greenland is beginning to be seen not just as a homeland, but as a global tourism product. As the world flocks to see icebergs, whales, and the aurora borealis, the island is entering a new era where its wild beauty becomes something to be bought and sold on the international market. Number 17. A meal that shocks outsiders. When visitors step into a Greenlandic home, they are not just entering a living space, but a survival culture that has existed for over 4,000 years. A meal might begin with whale, seal, or reindeer meat. According to Greenlandic government statistics, over 60% of Inuit households still consume traditionally hunted food at least a few times a week, as imported food is very expensive and not always readily available. In many towns, a kilogram of imported beef can cost 3 to 4 times as much as in Denmark, while seal or whale meat hunted by the locals themselves is almost the only stable source of protein year-round. Frozen food has to be transported by ship or plane over thousands of kilometers, so any storm can leave shelves empty for days. Traditionally, in Inuit, each person holds their own knife when eating. Meat is not pre-cut, but is separated directly from the bone at the table. This practice reflects a culture where people maintain a direct connection with their prey, rather than with supermarkets and global supply chains. In the same town, you can see two parallel worlds. About 10% of Greenland's population is of Scandinavian origin, and many of those families maintain a Danish-style diet with imported bread, milk, and coffee. Meanwhile, Inuit families still eat whales, seals, and Arctic fish as their ancestors have done for centuries. As tourism has surged in recent years, this difference has become even more apparent. Tourists come to experience the Arctic, but Greenlanders still have to live off what this frigid land provides. And in each meal, they continue to maintain a survival culture that much of the modern world has lost. Number 18. Greenland, the new focal point of the world. Greenland looks like a forgotten land, where clean water must be pumped through pipes that can freeze over and goods must fly thousands of kilometers to reach a town of a few thousand people. But this seemingly fragile island is becoming one of the most geopolitically valuable pieces of land in the 21st century. Beneath its ice, which is more than 2 kilometers thick, lie reserves of rare earth elements, uranium and iron, that are indispensable to the high-tech world. Geological estimates suggest that Greenland is among the very few areas outside of China capable of supplying rare earth elements on an industrial scale, used to manufacture phones, batteries, wind turbines, and advanced weapons. Meanwhile, as Arctic ice melts more than twice the global average, new shipping routes are forming around Greenland, shortening journeys between Asia, Europe, and North America by thousands of kilometers. This is why the United States maintains a military base in Greenland, China seeks to invest in infrastructure and mining, and Russia expands its influence throughout the Arctic. On the world's strategic map, Greenland is no longer just an icy island, but a crossroads of resources, trade, and military power. At the heart of all this maneuvering is a society of just over 50,000 people, speaking an ancient language, living amidst ice, wind, and sea. Greenland is not poor, it is just small. And in this century, the biggest question is not what Greenland has, but whether the Greenlanders have the power to decide the fate of the very land the world covets. Greenland is more than just an icy land on the edge of the world. It's a small society caught between ancient traditions and increasingly powerful global forces. As the ice melts and resources are revealed, the island's future will no longer be determined by itself. Will Greenland become an independent Arctic nation, or merely a new hotspot on the world power map? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you'd like to continue exploring the hidden corners and paradoxes of the world, subscribe to join us on our next journey.